Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live. Joe Samaniego, Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. Is NASCAR weekend. Is at the unpredictable super speedway known as Talladega. But first, some concerning stories we got to first report on coming out of NASCAR, particularly Stewart House Racing. On Friday evening, it was announced from Stewart House Racing that two members tested positive for the virus, which essentially has caused this pandemic situation. Now, according to Jeff Gluck from The Athletic, the two members were not part of the traveling team, so they have no role in traveling to and from the racetracks. NASCAR has recommended that all teams keep their teams separated, with the traveling crew, which consists of the driver, pit crew, crew chief, and any necessary personnel at the track, and the shop crew and office management separate to limit the spread in case something like this was to occur. Now, one of the things, should NASCAR go forward with implementing new stricter rules, especially since we now have our first case within a team? Is this something where we feel like NASCAR should start looking into, okay, we need to revisit our policies when it comes to social distancing?
Well, to be honest, I think NASCAR's already been a leader, in the return to sports, and everything's been going really so far for the most part. They have social distance in the garage, and everybody is wearing masks, and we're finally starting to have fans return to the track. And maybe NASCAR needs to look at making. I understand that this is a touchy subject for a lot of people, but maybe at the racetrack, just to keep fans safe, might have to make masks mandatory or whatever, since scientific studies are showing that wearing masks can help reduce the spread of the virus. It won't entirely prevent the spread of the virus, but it can definitely help reduce your chances significantly. And I understand that some fans might be angered if they're forced to wear a mask to the race, but they might just have to do it for their own good. And my question is, how would NASCAR enforce something like this? I'd really hate to be the person to have to force somebody to wear a mask to the race, but it just might be necessary. And I think that NASCAR has some great policies in place. Like doing the deep cleaning, and all the teams practicing the protocols from health officials, and overall, I think NASCAR is doing a solid job. And to be honest, I'm not surprised that we have two positive cases of the virus, because it honestly seemed inevitable in my opinion. And NASCAR is just gonna have to follow all of its guidelines accordingly, and make sure when someone tests positive, get those folks quarantined for 2 weeks, and then once they've recovered, they get their negative test, and then they can come back to work. You need to make sure they're doing all the contact tracing as well, to make sure we're not infecting a lot of other people, so it can keep the sport moving. So unless we see like a massive outbreak in the garage of the virus, I don't anticipate NASCAR shutting down anytime soon.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like something NASCAR's going to shut down. Probably, if most, they seem like they might be going ahead and revisiting their policies just to see, is there anything we can improve on, just because now we do have the two cases. But overall, like you said, it does seem NASCAR has been leading the way. They've been doing pretty good overall when it comes to implementing rules requiring all the track personnel at the tracks, at the races currently, to wear a mask. So it's going to be really interesting. Now, many of the teams, they're going to be following this situation with Stewart Haas Racing and see how it develops. Does this add to the uncertainty of the rest of the season being complicated?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's certainly going to be a story that we'll need to follow closely, and we're all hoping that the worst case scenario doesn't happen. And there's an outbreak in the garage where everybody is getting sick, because I know if a large amount of people in the garage get sick, it's probably going to be impossible to resume the season at that point. NASCAR would probably have to probably would not have no choice but to shut down if an outbreak in the garage occurred. But hopefully, at best case scenario, we can keep the spread of the virus at a minimum level at the shop, and also for the folks at the track as well. Although we haven't heard of like any positive cases from people who are actually at the track, but it's definitely up in the air. We just have to wait and see what happens, and we're all hoping for the best case scenario here.
Definitely looks like it's going to be a wait and see and hoping for the best. I know NASCAR, they're definitely going to be enforcing their social distance policy, everything to try to keep everyone safe and healthy. It's going to be really something else. And then it's just going to be a matter of how we see the progression of this pandemic situation as it might affect what state or federal authorities decide, and if that complicates the season. Definitely, I know we talked about it might being something where this makes it a lot more uncertainty for the teams. And now we're heading to one of the most uncertain tracks when it comes to who's the favorite, who could win. Talladega. Kobe, for years, Talladega has been referred to as the wild card race. It is insanely intense, especially in the playoff race. And we are now in a really unique situation with this pandemic. Is today a must win situation for everybody?
Yes, yes, as you mentioned, there's definitely a lot of uncertainty right now. I mean, NASCAR's been coming up with a revised schedule, in small chunks, little by little. We still have no idea what the rest of the schedule is going to look like. Although NASCAR plans to have the playoff races as scheduled, as we see, the number of virus cases are currently growing, and right now, and I believe 23 states, as I last saw from a scientific report, and some places are doing better than others, and particularly the South. That's where the cases are rising. And Talladega is in the deep South, sweet home Alabama, but it's definitely a situation that might be out of NASCAR's control. We have NASCAR is just going to have to race for as long as they can, and hopefully they'll be able to keep racing going. But sometimes that stuff is just out of your control. And for these drivers at Talladega, with so much uncertainty surrounding the rest of the season, although NASCAR does have a revised schedule in place, I think winning at Talladega would definitely be a great thing for drivers who have not locked themselves into the playoffs yet.
Definitely, when it comes to Talladega, it's very unique because with it being a super speedway, we have the large packs of racing. This situation this year with the 2020 season, NASCAR has said over and over, we're going to run all the races. There's a chance maybe we won't run all 36 events. Maybe there will be an event lost here or there. So it's going to be really interesting to see drivers see this as their best chance to get a win, especially a team like Front Row Motorsports, RPM. Some of these teams that don't have the speed or the horsepower, especially in the mile and a half, but could capitalize on some of the unpredictabilities here. In total, 11 times we've had a first-time winner here at Talladega. What makes Talladega such a great opportunity for a driver to earn their first win?
As Larry McReynolds always said, I remember watching him on Fox when I was a little kid. At the start of every restrictor plate race, he'd always say, "If your car will crank today, you can go out and win this race." And that's absolutely true, because for many years people have been saying that the draft is the great equalizer. So at a normal track like a mile and a half, if your equipment is not as good as the others, it doesn't really matter when you come to Talladega, because when you're able to get in the draft at this plate track, it definitely, like the large gap between the bigger teams and the small teams is completely gone. Pretty much any one of the starters can go out there and win at Talladega, and it's certainly unpredictable. And as you see, a lot of drivers have multiple wins at Talladega, and some drivers come to Talladega for many years and never even get to sniff victory lane. It's certainly it's a very unpredictable track, and you need to have a lot of things go your way and go right. You need to avoid the big crashes, avoid troubles on pit road, and you just need to make sure you're in the right place at the right time. I understand. You understand when you're on the final lap, or the final few laps, you need to position yourself, like, do I want to be leading, or do I want to be in second, or whatever. I mean, we've seen people win from all places at Talladega. So it's definitely unpredictable, and winning at Talladega is definitely special, because it's hard to win at one of these restrictor plate tracks.
Definitely, it's really challenging to win the super speedway tracks. Very unpredictable. You still need a very good race. Try to minimize trouble in pit road. Try to minimize any damage or contact that could disrupt the aerodynamics of the car. And of course, definitely avoid what a lot of folks call the big one. Now, I mentioned 11 winners. Of course, we got to talk about the driver of the number 11 car, Denny Hamlin. So far, he is the first driver this season to gain 3 wins this season. Denny Hamlin is the last Toyota driver to win in 2014 at Talladega. Can Denny win today at Talladega? And are you surprised that Toyota has not won there since 2014?
Wow, it's really been that long since 2014. I had no idea Toyota hasn't won since 2014, but Denny Hamlin's a good super speedway racer, and I definitely think that he has a lot of momentum right now, and it would not surprise me if Denny Hamlin's a contender to win at Talladega today, and and actually, Toyota is greatly outnumbered and compared to the Chevrolet and Ford. So at an unpredictable track like this, their chances are definitely a lot lower of winning than being a driver of a Toyota or a Chevrolet.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see with Denny Hamlin. If he does win, it'll be really interesting because that means so far in the 2020 season, he has swept the 2 super speedways, being if he does it at Talladega, and then of course the Daytona 500.
Apologies, misspoke there. I meant to say Fords and Chevrolets, not Toyota. Yeah, but speaking of Toyotas, Denny has a fast Toyota, but the Chevrolets and Fords have been strong here. And one strong car everyone will be looking at today is the non-car of Chase Elliott. Last year, Elliott got the win here at Talladega, track where his father currently holds the all-time speed record of a whopping 212 miles per hour. He'll definitely be someone to contend with, and again looking to bounce back after Joey Logano played a role in costing him the lead and the eventual win at Homestead. So, how impressed are you with Chase's ability to bounce back after his run in?
Definitely, I've been very impressed with the way Chase Elliott has been able to handle the adversity. We've seen drivers in the past, they come close to the win, something goes wrong, and it seems like their season falls apart, or they have a string of good performances and then they just have a couple bad races and they just seem to not be anywhere. Chase Elliott could have easily gone with a negative attitude after Darlington. He didn't. He almost won at the Coca-Cola 600. Bad pit stop strat call. One of those racing deals, he was in a vulnerable situation. He could have easily, again, had a negative attitude towards the next race. He goes out and win. And it seems every time they've had some sort of bad luck, Chase seems to be able to really focus on the task ahead and performing the next race. And especially after what happened at Homestead with him and Logano, the way Chase Elliott made his comments of, I just got to get through lap traffic better rather than extending the feud, I think it really shows he is focused on the championship and performing well.
Yeah, when I look at Chase Elliott, I definitely see a mature driver, and it seems like he's starting to let his personality show a lot more, and it's definitely been very entertaining for the fans to see. I remember seeing a lot of comments from fans saying that Chase Elliott doesn't have a personality at all, and they were like wondering how is this guy the most popular driver in the sport when he has no personality, and on. And in contrast, it seems like Chase Elliott has quite a personality. Maybe he just didn't let it show before, but definitely now Chase Elliott is starting to show his fiery, sarcastic personality, and I think it's definitely something that his fans love to see. And this year, the Chevrolets from Rick Hendrick are looking very fast. RCR is looking good as well, especially Tyler Reddick and the Ganassi Chevys will likely be contending today as well. Which Chevrolet driver do you think is feeling the most pressure to win today?
When it comes to a Chevrolet driver feeling pressure, I think William Byron has to be one of those drivers. He's again a 24 car, has a big, essentially, a lot of history, that 24 number. Alex Bowman has a win. Chase Elliott has a win. Jimmy Johnson has been knocking on the door. And I know I said this a couple times already in past episodes. William Byron seems to at times have really good runs, but can't seem to close the deal. I think he's under a little bit more pressure that he needs to deliver a win. He needs to prove he is worth being in the playoffs, not because of points, but because of win, and in that 24 seat.
Yes. There's always gonna be a lot of pressure when you're driving a 24 car, and you see how it went for Chase Elliott when he replaced Jeff Gordon in the 24. It didn't exactly go as well as he would have hoped. But when Chase Elliott switched to the famous number 9, with the Elliott name, everything seemed to turn around for Chase, and William Byron's definitely under a lot of pressure. I saw on Twitter this week that people were comparing the average finishes for William Byron and Bubba Wallace in the 43 car, and their average finishes, it's actually strikingly similar, believe it or not. And people were making a claim that say Bubba Wallace is overperforming and a RPM car that shouldn't be finishing in some of the places where it's finishing. And then William Byron is driving he's driving a Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet, which is arguably one of the cars that you want to be in this series, to be competitive and all that. And so far William Byron hasn't been able to break through in the victory lane. As you mentioned, William Byron will have he'll definitely have some good runs and show that he's capable of winning races, and then other races is just not good for him. And I think there's going to be a lot of pressure for William Byron to get that win this year because people are waiting, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can break through and get into victory lane, responding to all of the pressure. And Chevrolet's looking good, but Ford teams have been known to work really well together at these restrictor plate tracks. Do you anticipate the Ford drivers working together to position a blue oval in victory lane today?
Definitely. I don't see why they wouldn't. We saw how they worked really well together, the four teams in the past, especially Stewart Haas Racing, where they dominated that 1 year at Talladega during the playoffs. At the end, the big one, all sorts of circumstances, but still, Aric Almirola got his super speedway win at Talladega. So I definitely see the Ford camps, especially Stewart Haas Racing, they're going to rally, work together, and try to stay up front and stay out of trouble.
Oh yeah, you mentioned Almirola's win. I remember that Talladega race like I was yesterday. That was really crazy. All four of the Stewart Haas Racing Fords. They were working extremely well together, and it was just crazy because those four cars they could pull out of, it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and nobody else in the pack could catch them. It definitely reminded me of the old restrictor plate days. When the DEI cars were looking very strong on the super speedways, and one Ford driver looking for his sixth win and leads all active drivers with wins at Talladega is Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano is behind him with 3 wins at Talladega. Why is Brad Keselowski so good at Talladega and restrictor plate tracks in general?
Definitely one of the reasons why I think Brad Keselowski is really good at Talladega is some of his experience, especially in the Nationwide Series when he was racing there. He had essentially Dale Earnhardt Jr. helping him learn. Dale Earnhardt Jr., of course, is one of the best restrictor plates. Of course, Dale Earnhardt as well. So definitely he seems to be very, very comfortable at the restrictor plate tracks to the point where he even got his first NASCAR, it was then the Sprint Cup win, when he and Carl Edwards tangled at the Tri-Oval. He was trying to go for the win. Carl Edwards tried to make the block. We all know how that turned out. But definitely I feel Brad Keselowski, along with his experience, he has a really fast Ford. Roger Penske has seemed to be really strong with him. Logano has wins at Talladega as well. Blaney looks good there as well. So I definitely see Keselowski as a threat to win today.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the connection between Brad Keselowski and Dale Earnhardt Jr. You can't go wrong when Dale Earnhardt Jr. is your mentor at tracks like Daytona and Talladega, because along with his dad, Dale Earnhardt Jr. one of the best to ever do it on the restrictor plate tracks. And in my opinion, I think Brad Keselowski is definitely one of the best restrictor plate racers today. One of the best super speedway racers of all active drivers. But however, while Brad Keselowski might be good at these super speedways, whoever ends up winning today will have to avoid the much anticipated big one.
The big one. Every Talladega race, we got the large packs of cars racing, traditionally because of restrictor plates. Now we have tapered spacers, and it's just something where you don't see at every other track except Daytona and Talladega. Packs of 20, 30, or even 40 cars. And even back then, when we had 43 cars, all 43 cars within a second of each other. Now, for folks that are brand new, a lot of times these cars are running so close to utilize the draft. If you get fall too far, you lose the draft, you fall behind. That used to be a little bit of a strategy where we see teams run towards the back of the pack for most of the race, not lead laps until near the end. They'll come back to try to capture the win and avoid the big one, the big crash. Now we have stages though, so that eliminates it. Where if you're desperate on stage points, you would want to be up there during the stage breaks at Talladega and of course Daytona. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the big one. Now, one question: why does the big one occur here so frequently at Talladega?
Because when you put when you put 40 cars in a tight pack inches apart, the big one is bound to happen at some point because you have to be perfect when it comes to pack racing. Even just one tiny mistake and the whole field is gonna go up in the flames and smoke, and it's not gonna be good for anyone. Even just one little mistake, and you could take out 20 cars and ruin a lot of people's days. So the big one is definitely something that you don't want to cause, but it's inevitable when you come to places like Daytona and Talladega. You just need luck to fall your way and make sure you're in the right place at the right time to miss the big wreck. But sometimes the big one, it happens everywhere. Sometimes it happens at the back of the field, the middle of the field, or even at the front. As we saw years ago, when Tony Stewart was trying to win day and he ended up getting turned in front of the field and basically crashed every single competitor.
Yeah, that was a very memorable moment where Tony Stewart last lap tried to put the block. I believe it was on Waltrip and Casey Mears coming, took out just about everyone, and I think it looked like 2 or 3 cars crossed the finish line in that race. The spring race, while Talladega is known for being pretty crazy, a lot of cautions, the spring race has twice gone caution free. Now we can't go caution free anymore with the stage break, so we're gonna have at least 2. If there's a competition caution, 3 cautions. Is there a chance that those are going to be the only cautions we see today, or do you think we are going to see essentially the big one and probably another crazy Talladega race?
Oh, I can say with a lot of confidence that there's gonna be a 0% chance that the two stage break caution will be the only cautions. This is Joe. This is Talladega. This track is big, it's bad, and it's fast. And when people think of Talladega, you think of mayhem and absolute chaos. I think it's gonna be a really crazy race, despite all the tweaks with the aero package. I think we're definitely gonna see an intense race once the drivers get used to the new changes to the package, and I definitely think we're going to see some cautions.
Definitely cautions always tend to breed caution as well too, especially if there's a caution for a car that stalls on the track or something or debris that just bunches everyone back up together. Now, you had mentioned the big one and how it seems to happen all over the place. I know we've seen it exiting the turns, the backstretch, entering the turns, in the turns, and even a tri-oval. Is there any particular place more prone for the big one to happening, especially if like the cars are a little less stable or anything?
No, I don't think that there's any place that's more prone to the big one. As you mentioned, we've seen the big one all over in the turns on the backstretch and the tri-oval. However, I've heard a lot of people say that the tri-oval is the most treacherous part of the racetrack because that's where the cars get really light, and when a car gets turned around, and the car's light, well, like we don't know what's gonna happen. Is it gonna catch air or is it gonna stay on the ground? And typically when we're coming to the checker, coming to the checker flag at Talladega, there's definitely always a chance that you're gonna see a big crash. You remember, I believe it was I remember it was the race last fall, in the playoffs. I believe it was Chris Buescher and Parker Kligerman who crashed hard coming to the checker flag as it was a photo finish between Ryan Blaney and Ryan Newman, and stuff like that's is gonna happen, and it's especially when they're blocking like crazy at the front trying to secure the win because as we've seen in recent years with this super speedway package, blocking is very important, and sometimes it's almost impossible to block because of the big run that the driver behind gets.
You bring up a really good point about blocking. For race fans that are new to NASCAR, NASCAR has no policy against blocking. Some other series, such as Formula One, IndyCar, they have rules where a driver could do one defensive move, usually change their lane once, but cannot change that lane again to make another block. NASCAR has no rules like that. So blocking does become a very big issue in these restrictor plate races. And then we do see some of the, not only just the big ones, but some of the more intense crashes are a result of blocking. One I can recall was when Matt Kenseth got airborne in the backstretch, flying towards that inside wall. Thankfully, didn't go over a wall, didn't go over the catch fence inside, but that was definitely very scary seeing him get airborne that year.
Yeah, and actually, due to incidents like that with Matt Kenseth going airborne, or Brendan Gaudin last fall at Talladega with a complete blowover, or even Ryan Newman's horrifying crash on the final lap of the Daytona 500. So incidents like that made NASCAR do stuff like the changes that we're gonna see today with the aero package. And yeah, once again, NASCAR will have the package where the cars will have a will have a small spoiler, but also reduce horsepower thanks to a larger taper spacer, eliminating the aero ducts and slip tape on the back to reduce tandem drafting, and numerous improvements in the cockpit for the drivers to help out with safety. What kind of effect do you think it will have here?
Definitely, it's going to be, I think, the same track product that we've seen in the past. The big noticeable difference, especially with that slip tape, I don't think we're going to see a lot of tandem drafting, especially when it comes towards the end of a stage or the end of the race. That's where we'll see two cars just lock bumpers essentially and just push their way to the front. Of course, a lot of times they don't see this often because NASCAR has a reduced opening. So if you're tandem drafting for too long, your engine will overheat. Now with the slip tape, it's going to make it a little bit harder. So you will see a lot more of the pack, a lot less of the tandem efforts in effect. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that will affect particularly the last bit, because now it just guarantees that everybody wants to be in the pack towards the end of the race and try to be within striking distance of the leader.
Yeah. NASCAR has actually done a remarkable job looking at what happened to Ryan Newman and making the car safer for him and all the other competitors out there. And for Ryan Newman, getting back in the car at a super speedway, which is very similar to Daytona. Do you think he has any anxiety, or is he extra nervous about the race, considering what happened on the final lap of the Daytona 500?
I definitely think entering this race weekend is something a little bit stressful, especially for close family and friends of Ryan Newman. Of course, anytime you see a loved one going out to the racetrack or any sporting event where there's such a high risk, there's nerves there. I could still remember Jeff Burton's wife who would be on the pit box and they'll show her anxiety waiting for the race to be over, especially when Jeff Burton was leading. So I think there'll be a little bit of that. Ryan Newman, I see him just, he maybe ask more questions about it, from media, fans, just ask him, are you ready for Talladega after what happened in Daytona? And he might think about a little bit more here and there. But I'm very, very confident once he puts that helmet on, he is in the zone, he is focused, and he is going to put Daytona behind him and just focus on getting a win at Talladega.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you. These drivers definitely do a good job, and just professional athletes in general. When there's an outside factor trying to interfere with your job, you just have to put in the review mirror. And I'm confident that Ryan Newman is gonna do that, and everything's gonna be perfectly fine for him throughout the race at Talladega, and hopefully we'll all have a safe race. And in 2017, the most cautions that we've ever seen here was 11, and we have about an average of 7 cautions per race at Talladega. But now it is time for pick a winner. Joe, who are you picking to win today's race at Talladega?
For today's race at Talladega, I'm going to go with the person that you mentioned has 6 wins here, Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski does have more wins out of any active driver here. And with a quick look at the top 10 starters for today's race, you will see he is again starting in the top 10 and in that 6th spot. So I may have accidentally misspoken. He has 5 wins here, going for a 6th win today. So it looks already promising. Some of the other top 10 stars you see: Martin Truex, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson are your top 4. Kevin Harvick rounds out the top 5. Kurt Busch, Alex Bowman, Joey Logano, and Clint Boyer are 7 through 10. So my pick for pick a winner today is going to be Brad Keselowski, the number 2 Deuce.
Yeah, and I believe I'll go with the guy who's been in contention to win the last two super speedway races, but it hasn't exactly worked out for him, and especially the last time around. I think it's going to be redemption for Rocket Man. Ryan Newman is going to break through and win today at Talladega.
I'll be really interested to see if Ryan Newman could do that. Be sure to watch the race. You could catch it on your local Fox broadcasting station, and you're listening to us on the Ultimate Sports Radio Network. Stay tuned for the live broadcast of the race. I'm Joe Samaniego.
I'm Kobe Lambert. Thank you for watching. But before we go, we want to send out our best wishes to a legend, to a hero, Alex Zanardi, who is recovering in the hospital after suffering a serious head injury while competing in a handbike race in Italy. The former F1 driver and two-time Kart Series world champion has been an inspiring figure after losing both of his legs in a horrifying crash, but continuing on with handbike racing and again auto racing using hand controls. Using a hand controlled throttle system with the manufacturer BMW. We are thinking of Alex Zanardi, his family, and his friends during this difficult time.